He thought his battles ended when he left the war, until one scream from a mansion in the fog dragged him back into the darkness. Inside those shining walls lived a secret so evil, even God seemed silent. But when a soldier's courage meets a mother's love, miracles don't need angels. They just need someone brave enough to act. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories of faith, courage, and the miracles God hides in the darkest places. The coastal town of Newport, Oregon, still slept under a curtain of salt-heavy fog when Ethan Cole began his morning run. The sea was a low, whispering presence beyond the dunes, its rhythm steady, hypnotic, almost comforting. The kind of silence that used to soothe him before deployments. But since returning home, silence no longer offered peace. It only amplified what echoed inside. Each step on the damp asphalt struck with precision, a rhythm learned from years of military conditioning, yet his mind wandered somewhere darker, where time hadn't moved since the desert. The memory came uninvited. The dust storm, the scream over the radio, the blast that took 3 of his brothers and left him with scars too deep for any doctor to see. He kept running because stopping meant remembering. At his side trotted Rex, the German shepherd who had survived that same explosion. The dog bore no visible injury, but in the quiet between waves, Ethan sometimes saw the same unease in Rex's eyes that haunted his own. The dog rarely barked anymore. He listened, waited, and watched with the patience of a soldier. They shared something wordless, 2 survivors orbiting the same silence, unwilling to break it. The path curved near the cliffs overlooking Yaquina Bay. The fog there was thicker, pressing close like smoke. Ethan slowed his pace, adjusting his breathing. Then, faintly, through the white wall of mist, came a sound that didn't belong to the ocean. Clank, a pause, clank, another. The rhythm was deliberate, mechanical, and wrong. He froze. Rex stopped too, ears twitching forward, muscles tense. For a moment, Ethan thought it might be the wind against some loose sheet of metal. But the sound came again, sharper, heavier, followed by something else, a muffled whimper. His pulse quickened, not from exertion but recognition. A cry like that had a pattern, a sequence. Pain, breath, restraint. The kind of sound you learn to distinguish in training when identifying whether an enemy combatant or hostage was still alive. The years in combat had taught him to hear intention behind sound. This wasn't random. This was repetition. Discipline twisted into cruelty. He crouched low, scanning the slope that led to the bluff's edge. Through the fog, a dark shape emerged, an enormous house of glass and concrete perched above the rocks like it ruled the sea. He'd noticed it before during his runs, admired it from a distance for its precision, the symmetry of wealth. Now it felt like a fortress, too silent, too clean, too detached from the world below. Rex gave a low growl, barely audible, then looked up at him for direction. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He felt that old weight settle across his shoulders, the pull of duty he thought he'd left behind. He had promised himself, after the injury, after the endless rounds of therapy and pills, that he would not interfere again. He had seen enough. The Navy had thanked him for his service, sent him home with medals and nightmares, and told him to heal. But healing wasn't something you could order a soldier to do. It was earned, and sometimes it meant doing what no one else would. He looked back toward the fog-shrouded mansion. The noise had stopped. The silence that followed was worse. He forced a breath through his teeth. "Easy, boy," he murmured, placing a hand on Rex's neck. The dog's heart beat fast beneath his palm. Whatever was happening in that house, it wasn't the kind of thing you ignored and slept through. Still, logic fought instinct. Maybe it was just construction, a broken pipe, someone fixing something heavy. Maybe the whimper had been an animal, but the sound had been too human, too fractured. He glanced down the empty road, no cars, no movement, no witnesses. The world was perfectly still. He walked toward the edge of the overlook, where he could see part of the estate through the thinning fog. The building was immense, steel frames, floor-to-ceiling windows, a garden trimmed so precisely it looked unnatural. And yet, for all its symmetry, it lacked life, a sterile kind of perfection that money often builds to hide the rot underneath. Then the sound came again, this time softer, strangled, a sob cut short. Ethan's stomach clenched. He had heard that tone on too many operations, fear with no voice left behind it. Rex pressed closer to his leg, the faintest growl escaping his throat. Ethan stood still, mind working. Years of training kicked in automatically. Pattern recognition, entry points, surveillance angles, tactical silence. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was the United States on a foggy morning, and he was just a veteran out for a run. He couldn't breach someone's home because of a noise. That was how people like him ended up in headlines, not hero stories. He forced himself to step back, to breathe, to think like a civilian again. He turned, intending to walk away, when another sound reached him, a metallic crash followed by a plea, a woman's voice this time. "Please, stop." The words shattered whatever restraint he had left. For a split second, the old world rushed back, the endless sand, the voice of his commander over the radio. "Move, Cole! You hear them suffering! Move!" He closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and when he opened them again, there was no hesitation. He wasn't on leave anymore. He was on mission. Ethan moved quickly but silently down the slope, Rex following close. He found the perimeter fence tall but not insurmountable. There were security cameras expected for a place like this, but they were angled toward the road, not the rear. He crouched in the shadow of a cypress tree, observing. The glass walls reflected only fog and sea. No figures moved inside. Yet somewhere beyond that wall of wealth, someone was in pain. He didn't need to see it to know it. He stayed there for several minutes, listening, measuring. The noises had stopped again, leaving only the soft lap of water below the cliff. It would be reckless to go in now. He needed to understand more. Who lived there? What was happening? When it happened? The old part of him, the disciplined soldier, insisted on reconnaissance before action. But another part, the broken human who had watched too many innocents die while waiting for orders, whispered, "If you wait again, someone else will pay the price." He stood. The fog rolled thicker, swallowing both man and dog in white. Rex looked up, eyes steady, waiting for the next move. Ethan exhaled through his nose, gaze fixed on the mansion. "We'll come back tonight," he muttered. "If I'm wrong, I'll sleep better. If I'm right—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The ocean answered with a crash against the rocks, a dull echo like distant artillery. Ethan turned away, Rex following silently. As they disappeared into the mist, the house loomed behind them, serene and untouched, as if nothing had ever disturbed its perfect quiet. But Ethan knew better. Behind those immaculate walls, something had broken, and the fog wasn't thick enough to hide it forever. Night came quietly to Newport. stretching a heavy veil of mist over the cliffs. The ocean's breath turned cold and slow, and from the distance, the grand house on the hill looked like a ship of glass drifting in fog. Ethan Cole stood at the edge of the slope, his eyes fixed on that silent fortress. Beside him, Rex crouched low, his body coiled with awareness. The dog had been restless all afternoon, pacing near the door, nose twitching toward the sea, as though the scent of wrongdoing carried on the wind. Ethan felt the same pull. He'd spent hours convincing himself not to come back, but the weight in his chest had made sleep impossible. He had seen too much cruelty disguised as order, too much violence hidden behind good manners. He could ignore it no longer. The fog thickened as he approached the property. The security lights along the driveway glowed like distant fireflies, dim and scattered. He circled to the rear, where manicured hedges and a service gate met the drop-off toward the sea. Rex padded silently beside him, his breath shallow but steady. "Stay close," Ethan whispered. The words were less command than prayer. He stopped behind a row of stone planters. From here, he could see into the courtyard. Everything looked still, deliberate, perfect. And yet, beneath that order, Ethan sensed a tension that didn't belong, a stillness too complete to be peace. It was the kind of quiet that came after pain, when even sound was afraid to exist. A faint rustle drew his attention. Through the glass wall that separated the courtyard from the house, movement flickered. A tall man crossed the room, a pale reflection of wealth against the dim light. Ethan recognized him immediately. Thomas Crane, the property owner. He had seen Crane's face in local news stories, a philanthropist and tech investor, praised for his donations to veterans programs and disaster relief funds. The kind of man who smiled too easily for cameras. But the man behind the glass didn't smile. He moved with the calm assurance of someone used to control. His gestures were efficient, practiced, devoid of hesitation. He carried a cup of something steaming, set it down, and disappeared into the deeper rooms of the house. Ethan watched, forcing his breathing to stay even. People like Crane had always made his skin crawl, the ones who called men like him heroes in public, then built empires on the suffering of others. The Navy had once sent Ethan on a raid not unlike this years ago, when intelligence pointed to a warehouse in Mosul. There, too, a man of wealth and status had hidden torture behind polished doors. The memory resurfaced like a bruise pressed too hard, and he pushed it away. A low whine escaped Rex's throat. Ethan followed the dog's gaze to the far end of the courtyard. There, half hidden behind an ornamental fountain, a faint light flickered through the mist, like a candle guttering in a storm. Ethan crept closer, his shoes silent against the grass. As he neared, the shape came into focus, a small outbuilding, maybe a storage shed or utility room. Its door stood ajar, a thin chain dangling from the handle. The metallic glint was unmistakable, the same chain he had heard that morning. He moved faster now, keeping low, motioning Rex to stay. From the doorway came a sound, shallow breathing, broken by small whimpers. Ethan's pulse surged. He pressed a hand to the door, easing it open just enough to look inside. What he saw stopped him cold. A woman sat on the floor, wrists bound, face turned away. Her hair, streaked with gray, clung to her temples. She rocked slightly, muttering something under her breath. A metal bowl lay overturned beside her, water spreading across the concrete floor. Ethan stepped forward, crouching to her level. "Ma'am," he whispered, "I'm here to help. Can you hear me?" The woman flinched at his voice, curling tighter against the wall. She spoke so softly he had to lean in to catch the words. "Please, he'll hear you." "It's okay," Ethan said, scanning the room. "He's not here now. You're safe." "No one's safe here," she breathed, trembling. "Not me, not my boy." The words pierced through him. "Your boy?" Her eyes flicked up, unfocused but sharp with fear. "He works for him, for Crane. He said it was a good job, that it would change everything." Her voice cracked. "He doesn't see it. What he's doing for that man, what they're hiding." Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. This wasn't just cruelty. It was control through family, manipulation at its core. He unhooked the chain from her wrist. "We'll get you out," he said firmly. She shook her head violently. "If you take me, he'll find us both. He always finds us." Her voice broke into a sob. "He said if I talk, he'll ruin my son too." Rex stepped forward, pressing his head gently against her knee, the gesture calm and grounding. For a heartbeat, the woman stilled, her hand trembling as she touched the dog's fur. Then her gaze drifted toward the open door. "He checks every morning," she whispered. "You have to go before he comes." Ethan hesitated. His training screamed at him to act now, to extract her immediately. But another part of him, the part that had survived too many missions gone wrong, knew this was bigger. If Crane was involved in something deeper, he needed proof. He needed to see what kind of man would chain another human being in his home. He heard a faint creak from somewhere inside the mansion. Rex stiffened, hackles rising. Someone was moving. Ethan helped the woman to her feet, steady but silent. "Listen to me," he said softly. "I'll come back for you tonight. But you have to stay quiet until then. Do you understand?" She looked at him for the first time, eyes clouded with terror, but flickering with hope. "You'll come back?" "I will," Ethan promised. "What's your name?" "Linda," she whispered. "Linda Harper." Ethan nodded once, committing it to memory. Then he and Rex slipped out through the mist, vanishing behind the line of hedges. They made it halfway down the slope before Ethan stopped. From behind them, through the fog, a voice carried faintly on the wind, low, commanding, unmistakably male. "Where are you hiding, Linda?" Ethan turned back, his jaw tightening. Crane's silhouette appeared briefly against the house's lighted windows, calm, unhurried, holding something that glinted in the faint glow. Rex growled softly. Ethan laid a hand on the dog's neck, his pulse steadying into purpose. "Not yet," he whispered. "Tonight." They melted into the darkness as the fog rolled heavier across the cliffs. Behind them, the mansion stood like a predator, pretending to sleep. But inside, a secret had stirred, and it would not stay buried for long. The morning after the storm broke with a weak sun that seemed unsure of itself. The waves below the cliffs of Newport whispered against the rocks, and a thin mist hung low, refusing to leave completely, as if it, too, waited to see what would happen next. Ethan sat in his small rented cabin, staring at the black coffee cooling in his cup. Rex lay near the window, eyes fixed on the horizon. The dog hadn't slept, and neither had Ethan. He kept hearing the same voice from the night before, Crane's calm, predatory tone echoing through the fog. "Where are you hiding, Linda?" He knew she wouldn't last another night in that house. He'd made her a promise, and promises were sacred things to men who had survived war. Breaking one wasn't just failure, it was betrayal. Still, he needed to plan this right. He wasn't a cop, and this wasn't a sanctioned operation. Every move he made now had to count. He spread a simple map of the estate across the table. It wasn't official, just something he'd drawn from memory and observation. The main house faced the sea, the service wing backed into the cliffs, and behind it all was the smaller shed where Linda had been kept. He tapped the pen against the page, tracing routes of escape, timing, angles of light. Rex lifted his head, ears twitching, as though he understood the silent calculation. By late afternoon, Ethan drove toward town. He needed gear, nothing military, nothing traceable. At a small hardware store near the docks, he picked up what he could pass off as tools, a small crowbar, heavy-duty wire cutters, and electrical tape. The clerk, a man named Doc Hayes, recognized him. Hayes had once served as a Navy medic before opening this store after the war. His left leg moved stiffly from an old shrapnel wound. "Cole," Hayes said, squinting, "didn't think I'd see you in town. You still running the beach like a ghost?" Ethan managed a faint smile. "Old habits." Hayes nodded knowingly. "Those habits kept us alive once. What's got you pacing again?" Ethan hesitated. He couldn't tell him everything. "Something bad up by the cliffs? A woman's in trouble? I might need your silence." Hayes leaned on the counter, face hardening. "You always did have that look when something wasn't right. You need a med kit?" Ethan nodded. Hayes handed him a small case. Antiseptic, gauze, a suture pack. "I don't want to know," Hayes said quietly. "But if this goes south, you didn't buy this from me." "Understood," Ethan said. When he returned to the cabin, dusk was already creeping in. Rex paced by the door, restless, tail low. "Yeah," Ethan murmured. "I know." He checked the gear, loaded everything into a small pack, and slipped on a dark jacket. Tonight wasn't about confrontation, it was about extraction. The fog rolled in heavier than before as they reached the property. The mansion was dark, except for a single golden light in the upstairs wing. Cranes! Shadow moved past at once, deliberate, unhurried. Ethan waited in the cover of the cypress trees until the shadow vanished. Then he moved. Rex stayed close, a silent ghost on 4 legs. He scaled the service wall quickly, boots finding quiet purchase on the stone. The courtyard beyond was cold, littered with drops of sea moisture. Every step echoed faintly in his ears, though the fog swallowed the sound. He slipped toward the shed, heart pounding in rhythm with the sea. When he reached the door, it was still chained, but from the outside this time, a precaution perhaps, after discovering the chain unlatched that morning. He cut it quietly. The door swung open with a slow creak. Inside, the air smelled of damp concrete and fear. Linda was there, lying on her side, barely conscious. Her wrists bore fresh bruises, and the bowl of water was empty. "Linda," he whispered, kneeling beside her, "it's me. I'm here." Her eyelids fluttered, a faint sound leaving her lips. "You came back." "I said I would." She tried to sit up, wincing from the effort. "He knows. He saw the lock. He's been asking questions." Her breath trembled. "He thinks it was my son." Ethan froze. "Your son?" She nodded weakly. "Jake. He works for him, in the logistics department. I begged him to leave. But he said Crane gave him a future, a purpose." Her eyes filled with tears. "He doesn't understand what kind of man he's serving." Ethan clenched his jaw. A son trapped by loyalty, a mother paying the price. It was too familiar, how power preyed on the desperate. He lifted her gently, wrapping his jacket around her shoulders. "We'll get you out." "No," she gasped. "You don't understand. He won't stop at me if he thinks Jake betrayed him." A sound outside cut her words short, the faint crunch of gravel under a boot. Rex tensed instantly, pressing close to the door. Ethan extinguished his flashlight, holding his breath. Through the narrow crack in the door, a silhouette passed. Broad shoulders, a flashlight beam slicing through the mist. One of Crane's security men. They waited until the beam vanished. Ethan whispered, "We move now." They slipped out, staying low along the wall. The fog was their only cover, but it was thick enough to swallow movement. Rex took point, guiding them to the fence line. For a moment, freedom seemed close. Then Linda stopped. "Wait," she said, voice shaking. "My son, he's still inside. He was supposed to leave last night, but Crane convinced him to stay. He thinks I ran away. If you take me, he'll think I betrayed him." Ethan turned to her, his breath forming white clouds in the cold air. "Linda, if you stay, he'll kill you." She looked toward the mansion, where the faintest light burned in an upstairs window. "I can't leave him to that man," she whispered. "He's all I have." Ethan wanted to argue, but the look in her eyes silenced him. He knew that kind of loyalty, the one that refused to die even when logic demanded it. He had felt it for his own fallen brothers. He couldn't tear that from her. "Then I'll find him," he said finally. "You wait by the cliff path. Rex will stay with you." Rex let out a low, uncertain sound, but obeyed when Ethan motioned. Ethan turned back toward the house, his pulse steady, the old soldier's calm taking over. The fog was thicker now, like smoke before battle. Somewhere inside that glass fortress waited the boy and the man who had built this empire of cruelty. As Ethan reached for the side entrance, a sharp sound cracked the stillness, a shout, followed by the echo of running feet. He froze. The light in the upstairs window flared, then another and another. The house was waking. He looked back once, toward the dark outline of Linda and Rex by the cliff. Then he whispered, "Hold on." And with that, he slipped into the mansion shadow. The fog outside the mansion had thickened until it seemed to press against the glass walls like a living thing. Inside, the air was tense and sharp, humming with a quiet that felt ready to break. Ethan Cole moved through the corridor like a shadow, every sense stretched to its limit. The marble floors gleamed faintly in the emergency lights. Crane's security system had just activated, meaning someone had tripped an internal alarm. He had minutes, maybe less. His pulse stayed steady. Fear was a luxury he had unlearned long ago. Somewhere deeper in the house, a voice shouted, a man's, young, angry, confused. Ethan followed it, hugging the corners until the source came into view. In a brightly lit room lined with glass display cases stood a boy no older than 25, clutching a stack of papers and a laptop bag. His hands trembled. The expression on his face wasn't guilt. It was panic. Jake Harper. Ethan recognized him instantly from the resemblance Linda had described. The same uncertainty, the same decency buried under desperation. "Jake," Ethan said softly, stepping into the light. The young man spun around, startled. "Who are you?" "I'm a friend of your mother's," Ethan said. "She's outside. She sent me to get you out of here." Jake blinked, confusion and disbelief crossing his face. "My mother? She's alive?" "She's safe for now. But Crane, he's looking for both of you." Jake's grip on the laptop faltered. "You don't understand," he stammered. "If I leave, he'll think I betrayed him. If I stay, he'll—" Ethan cut him off. "He already has. You think loyalty will protect you from a man like Crane? He's using you, Jake. Your mother knew, and she paid for it." The young man's face tightened. "I didn't know what he was doing at first. I just moved shipments. Then I saw the manifests, military tech, weapons marked as disposal inventory. I asked questions. He said it was government clearance. I believed him." He gave a bitter laugh that sounded too old for his age. "By the time I realized it was too late, I'm part of it now. There's no way out." "There's always a way," Ethan said. "You just need to choose which side you're on." Before Jake could answer, footsteps echoed down the hall, measured, deliberate. Ethan motioned him toward the side exit, but Jake hesitated. "That's him," he whispered. "Crane." Thomas Crane appeared in the doorway, composed as ever. His silk robe was gone. In its place was a dark tailored jacket, as if he'd dressed for a business meeting. His calmness was worse than rage. "Mr. Cole," Crane said evenly, his tone almost polite, "you've made quite a mess." Ethan positioned himself slightly in front of Jake. "It ends tonight," he said. Crane chuckled softly, the sound hollow. "You think this is a war you can win with brute morality? You, of all people, should know how the world works. You fought for a system that hides men like me under its flag." "Maybe," Ethan said, his voice low, "but you're the kind of rot that keeps it bleeding." Crane sighed, glancing toward Jake. "And you," he said, his voice turning colder. "You disappoint me, son. I offered you a future, purpose, respect, and you throw it away for sentiment?" Jake's voice broke. "You lied to me. You lied to her." "She was a liability," Crane replied, "and liabilities are meant to be managed." Ethan's hand twitched toward his knife, but he forced himself still. There were cameras. He'd seen them on the way in. If Crane died now, Jake and Linda would be the ones blamed. He needed proof, not blood. Then from the open hallway came another sound, one that froze them all, a woman's voice, trembling but strong. "He doesn't need proof." Ethan turned. Linda Harper stood there, her face pale, clothes damp from the fog. Rex was behind her, silent and alert. Somehow she had followed him inside. Her breathing was uneven, but her eyes were clear. "Mom," Jake whispered, horrified, "you shouldn't be here." Crane's expression darkened. "You just don't know when to die, do you?" Linda ignored him. She stepped closer, her voice steadying. "You think fear keeps people loyal, Thomas, but you're wrong. Fear only lasts until love has something to protect." She turned to her son. "Jake, listen to me. You made mistakes, but you can still choose the right thing. Tell them what you know. Tell them everything." Tears welled in Jake's eyes. "If I talk, they'll arrest me too." Linda smiled faintly, a tired, heartbroken smile. "Then let them. Better a prison cell than a soul you can't live with. I would rather see you behind bars and free inside than chained to that man forever." Crane's composure cracked, his calm voice rising. "Enough. You think anyone will believe a janitor and a broken boy over me? I own this town." Ethan stepped forward, voice sharp as steel. "Not tonight." He pulled a small device from his pocket and pressed a button. A faint red light blinked. "Everything you've said is on record, Crane. The moment I walk out that door, it goes to NCIS." Crane froze, calculating. Then slowly he smiled. "You won't make it that far." He reached for a hidden switch on the wall, but Rex lunged. knocking him back with a growl that echoed off the glass. Crane stumbled, hitting the marble floor hard. His hand brushed against the base of a sculpture, a concealed pistol. He raised it, fury twisting his features. Ethan dove forward, shoving Jake aside. The gun fired, the sound deafening in the confined space. The shot hit the wall inches from Linda. Rex clamped down on Crane's wrist, the weapon clattering away. In the chaos, Linda grabbed the laptop from Jake's hands. "Take it!" she shouted to Ethan. "Run!" "No," he said, grabbing her arm. "We all go." But she shook her head. "You can't save us both. If they catch you with this, they'll kill you too. Go!" Her eyes locked on her son's. "Jake, listen to me. I'm not asking you to forgive yourself. I'm asking you to be better than me. Let this end with me." Before Ethan could respond, the sound of sirens began to rise in the distance, the kind that cut through fog like blades. Someone had called the police, or maybe Crane's men had triggered it. Either way, they were out of time. Ethan grabbed Jake by the arm, forcing him toward the side door. "She's buying us seconds. Don't waste them." Jake looked back once, his voice breaking. "Mom!" Linda stood still, facing Crane, her voice barely above a whisper. "You'll never bury this again." Ethan and Jake disappeared into the mist, Rex at their heels, the sirens growing louder. Behind them, a gunshot cracked through the night, echoing across the cliffs, sharp, final, unanswered. Ethan didn't look back. Not yet. The morning after the gunshot, Newport woke beneath a pale, reluctant sun. The fog had thinned, revealing the cliffs and the quiet sea below, as if nature itself was trying to wash away what had happened in the night. Ethan Cole stood near the edge of the rocky shoreline, the cold wind cutting through his jacket. Beside him, Rex sat silently, eyes fixed on the horizon. Neither man nor dog had spoken or slept since escaping the mansion. The echoes of that single gunshot still hung in Ethan's mind like the lingering crack of distant thunder. He didn't need to see what had happened to know. Some things didn't need witnesses to be true. Behind them, the faint hum of a patrol car broke the silence. A woman stepped out, adjusting her badge against the morning light. Special Agent Sarah Jensen of the NCIS carried herself with the calm focus of someone used to dealing with ghosts in uniform. She had been with federal investigations for over 15 years, long enough to recognize the line between justice and vengeance and how easily men like Ethan could cross it. "You called it in yourself," she said, walking closer. "That's rare for a SEAL." Ethan didn't look at her. "I'm not a SEAL anymore," he replied quietly. Jensen studied him. "Maybe not by rank, but men like you don't forget what they were trained to do." She glanced toward the cliffs where forensic teams were already arriving. "We found 2 bodies inside. One's Thomas Crane, the other—" She paused, voice softening. "Linda Harper. She was shot once in the chest. No struggle, no defensive wounds. Looks like she faced him." Ethan's jaw tightened. "She knew what she was doing." Jensen nodded. "Your dog kept us from finding you sooner," she added, almost with respect. "We had to follow his tracks back down the ridge." Rex glanced up briefly at the mention, as if aware of his role. His body was still tense, alert, every sense on guard. Ethan placed a steady hand on the dog's neck. "He's done enough," he murmured. Jensen crouched slightly, looking at the dog, then back to Ethan. "You risked your life to save that family, but you didn't save her." Ethan turned his gaze from the sea at last. She saved herself and her son. That was the only ending she would have accepted. From the road above, Jake Harper approached slowly. His face was pale, eyes red-rimmed, the weight of guilt far heavier than exhaustion. He carried a small envelope clutched in one hand. Jensen moved aside, giving him space. Jake stopped a few feet away from Ethan, voice breaking. "She wrote this before—" He couldn't finish. Ethan took the letter carefully. The paper was damp from the mist, but the ink was still legible. Linda's handwriting was unsteady, but every word was deliberate. "Ethan, if this reaches you, it means the choice has been made. Don't blame yourself. Tell Jake that forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's rebuilding. Tell him his mother chose truth over fear because I couldn't let my silence become his inheritance. Take care of Rex. He's proof that even those scarred by war can still guard the light." Ethan folded the note slowly, his throat tightening. He handed it to Jake. "She wanted you to have it." Jake's shoulders shook. "She died because of me." "No," Ethan said firmly. "She died for you. That's different." Jensen stepped closer. "Jake, we'll need you to testify. The files from your laptop are already in evidence. Crane's operation goes deeper than we thought. Smuggling, laundering, even connections to defense contracts. Your mother's statement will be key to exposing all of it." Jake nodded weakly. "I'll testify, whatever it takes." Rex rose and walked toward him, pressing his head against Jake's leg. A small gesture, but one that seemed to hold all the forgiveness the young man couldn't find in himself. Jake sank to one knee, fingers brushing the dog's fur. "She was brave," he whispered. "She was," Ethan said. "Braver than most soldiers I've known." The day moved slowly after that. Statements were taken, evidence collected, the last remnants of Crane's empire dismantled. Jensen gave Ethan her card, though she suspected he would never use it. "You could join us," she said quietly. "You're good at finding the truth when others are too afraid to look." Ethan managed a tired smile. "The truth finds me, Agent Jensen. That's the problem." By the time the sun reached the horizon, he and Rex were alone again. They walked along the edge of Yaquina Bay, the gulls circling overhead, the sea a mirror of gold and blue. Jake had been taken into protective custody, the investigation officially underway. Justice would come, not fast, not clean, but it would come. Ethan stopped at the same spot where the story had begun, the place where he'd first heard the sound of metal on stone. The house on the cliff was now sealed off, its windows dark, its silence finally honest. He looked out at the water, feeling both heavy and hollow. "You did good, boy," he said softly. Rex nudged his hand, then sat beside him, the two of them facing the horizon. For a long time, neither moved. The tide crept closer, washing away footprints in the sand, erasing the evidence of where they had stood. In the distance, a fishing boat's horn called through the fog, and something in Ethan eased. Not peace exactly, but something near it. He thought of Linda's words, "Don't let silence be your inheritance." Maybe that was what redemption meant, not erasing the past, but refusing to let it define the future. Ethan stood, whistled once, and Rex rose to his feet. Together, they walked along the shore as the light broke fully across the bay. The sun caught the dog's eyes for a moment, and Ethan could have sworn he saw something there, a reflection of the same quiet strength that had saved them both. And though the sea carried the ghosts of what was lost, the wind whispered something else, the sound of a promise kept. Sometimes miracles don't come with thunder or flashes of light from the sky. Sometimes they come quietly, through an act of courage, a sacrifice born from love, or the steady faith of someone who refuses to give up on what's right. On that fog-covered coast of Oregon, a mother chose truth over fear. A soldier chose compassion over anger, and a loyal dog stood guard between darkness and the light. And maybe that's where God moves, not above us, but through us, in the quiet choices that heal a broken world one act at a time. So if this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it. Leave a comment. Tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories of courage, faith, and redemption. Because somewhere tonight, there's another soul standing in the fog, waiting for a sign that goodness still exists. Let's be that sign. May God bless you, your loved ones, and every heart that still believes, even after the storm, that miracles are real.